Practice makes perfect by Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 13, Just a Little Brawl. There is much to be skeptical in this wild world of ours, so it no longer surprises me to learn how many people don't believe in anything. For many of us, the road is the difficult one, but the path is always there for us to follow, no matter how many times we may fall. The good news is that you can always find your way back, John. Naturally, some days are harder than others. I speak from experience there, but you have to try. We all have our doubts, that's alright. To doubt is to be human. No one's perfect. The light of your mind alone cannot burn away all darkness. Think of it like a fire. Like any flame, you need to feed it, give it fuel to keep it burning. Look in your heart when the walls come tumbling down. When you lose everything you have, you always have family, friends, the bonds you have along the way. We all go through periods of darkness, son, even now, even me. Of course, in a world filled with misery and uncertainty, it's a great comfort to know that in the end there is light in the darkness. And in such times, many turn to other vices, but it's good to have friends by your side. Family, if nothing else, ask yourself this, John. Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. Naruto, just a little bro. You fight good. John bit back a smile as he leveled the shield of Corsair Moors before his face and took a ready stance. Not a moment too soon, scarce had he raised his trusty bulwark than a powerful fist slammed into him. The impact alone rattled his arm and sent him sliding backwards. His shoe stomped down against the mat, aura sparking, chakra flaring to stick him in place and prevent an ignoble defeat. Grunting but a little, he wrestled himself away from the edge and slugged back in. Too close, she nearly knocked him clear out the ring at that time. Still, you fight good. He couldn't even bring himself to be angry after taking that hit. It was such a Yang thing to say that he had to laugh. Shaking the ache out of his arm, he considered the blonde brawler for a moment. Green aura for both of them, neither were anywhere in the yellow, but this wasn't working. He'd been on the back foot since they began. Swordplay was all well and good, but against someone like Yang Xiaolong, it wasn't enough. Time to fall back on his tried and true talents. John, no, Kurama growled. Don't even think about it. John, yes, bless it all. Normal or not, he'd been on the defensive for too long. I can barely move like this. Really love your puns, don't you? Sheathing his sword before him, he reached down and began to fiddle not with his crimson chestplate, gauntlets, or greaves, but rather what lay beneath them. You've been at it for the last 5 minutes, you know. Yang arched an eyebrow but didn't budge. What can I say? He heard the telltale crack of Ember Silica reloading as she cocked her fist. I like what I like. The ghost of a smile touched whiskered cheeks. Then you're gonna love this. Give me a second, will you? Never once to balk at a challenge, she stood her ground. All right, I'll bite. Not gonna use your sword? He cast Corsair Moors down. I'll let my fist do the talking. Nora hooted from the sideline. That a boy Johnny kick some blonde butt. Hey, I'm blonde. Meh. She waved the hand. Potato, potato. Not a week after Forever Fall, the combat class had a round come once again, dragging him back into the spotlight. After that wild waltz with Weiss, he'd almost dared to hope he'd proven himself capable enough for a while longer. He'd almost thought himself safe in the peaceful glow of anonymity. Not so, apparently. What Miss Goodwitch wanted, Goodwitch got. Or at least he wasn't facing Ruby. He didn't think he could bear to hurt her. She reminded him too much of his sisters. Good, pure, always ready with a smile and kind word, ever eager to help. Moreover, he was fairly certain Ruby wouldn't be able to take what was coming Yang's way. There, he found the clasp beneath his gauntlets. Something heavy stuck ground. It wasn't his armor. Yang made a puzzled noise, but he didn't stop. Next came the one wrapped around his chest beneath his armor. A quick tap on the final strap went with it, followed the weight beneath his greaves. One by one they crashed down against the mat, allowing him ease of movement once more. He rolled his shoulders and bounced upon one heel, then the other. Testing himself, he was quite pleased with what he found. Much better. He'd been wearing those blasted things for the last year. His body felt so much lighter without them. A little laugh trickled into the air. It took John a moment to realize it came from him. Pyrrha hummed from the sidelines. Oh dear, those look heavy. She had no idea trucker weights weren't something you wanted to mess about with. Yang balked back, eyeing the small pile unlimbered at their feet. You were wearing weights under your armor this entire time? Weiss uttered a strangled sound behind him, drawing a wince from John. Oh, right, he'd fought her with those on, hadn't he? Couldn't remember. It felt like he had. You really have no idea, do you? John shrugged hopelessly. Nope. Weiss made angry Weiss noises anew. Ballsy! Yang pumped a fist and started forward. I like it. Ruby squawked at his back. Hey, that's my line, dirty line stealer. He craned his neck towards her. I'll buy you a plate of cookies after class. It was like flipping a switch. Her squawk became a squeal of joy. And you're forgiven. Yang's shout behind was his only warning. Heads up! John dodged by a hair's breadth, narrowly avoiding a fist that would have launched him clear out the ring, and lashed out in kind. She was all too happy to meet him head on. Clenched knuckles collided, aura sparked as air burst between them. Cheery lilac eyes blazed back at him. They almost seemed to burn red. What was that? A semblance or something? She swung with her other fist, and when he reciprocated, said fist opened, fingers grasping. Quite suddenly, he found himself holding hands with her, grappling against this gorgeous, grinning girl. His brain bleated in dismay. Isn't this a little forward? That's much better. She all but purred the words. I can actually feel that. John felt something too. Embarrassment. He'd never held hands with a girl before. Eye on the ball, tiger. Much to his chagrin, she tried to push forward and failed. Her smug smile vanished as quickly as it came. John's didn't waver. This wasn't something he could fake. If he let Yang overpower him, she'd surely notice. That would lead to questions he wasn't ready to answer. So he planted his feet, gritted his teeth, and took one step, two, three. Slowly, inexorably, he pushed Yang back yet again, towards the ring, credit where it was due. She caught on quickly. Ah, hell! Her lips pursed in a scowl. Weiss didn't say you were this strong. I'm sorry. He winced a little. Time for you to lose. Yang was strong. Really, she was. He was just stronger than her. She must have realized it too, because she broke the grapple and swept his legs. The world twisted, and he had all of an instant to see Amber Silica whistling towards his face. Say what you would about Yang, but she wasn't stupid. She had a temper that burned white hot when you tugged on her hair, as he'd learned after that last combo, but anger didn't necessarily make her a berserker. She was an entirely different beast than Weiss, stubborn as only a fellow blonde could be. Damn it all, that made him want to fight her fair and square. Slapped a hand on the mat, he caught himself, pivoted his hips, and smashed the bruising kick into her side. He felt her ribs creak before she hit the mat. Yang didn't stumble as so much as she dropped to a knee. Even so, it gave him time enough to scramble upright. She grit her teeth and surged after him with a roar. He found himself returning it as he lunged at her. His fist slammed into her cheek. An uppercut smashed into his chest, rattling his armor. He caught her by the arm and reeled her into a bruising knee. They spun away and came back for more. Ha! He heard her cry. That's more like it. Where have you been hiding? Time got funny after that, seconds blurring into minutes as they fought on, strike after strike, combo after combo, a blazing burly brawl that saw them raging across the ring. Hoots and hollers of encouragement chased them as they fought. Had he been aware of them, he might have blushed. Fight well. Go, John. Kick her ass. Save some of him for me, Xiaolong. All eyes turned to Weiss. What? She shrugged. At least I'm honest about it. He heard none of it, only the roar in his ears, the sweat on his skin, the smile stretching on his face. He could feel his right eye aching, a black eye forming, but he didn't care. Wading in, ducked a kick, caught Yang by her thigh and flung her away. She twisted in the air and unloaded on him, amber silica raining dust around him. He crossed his arms and trusted in his armor, only for her to come raging through the smoke and force them on the defensive once more. Someday, son, he recalled Dad's words in an instant. Someday, you'll meet someone who gives as good as they get. Watch out for people like that. They just won't go down. Dad had been right. This was what he lived for. Give him a good fight any day of the week. He was pants when it came to homework. Gee, it's almost like you needed to learn those things before you came to Beacon. Not helping, John gave as good as he got, wailing on her with nearly no restraint. Yang returned it in kind. Her grin had returned. He wasn't sure why. Her aura was falling and fast. Any moment now, Miss Goodwitch would step in. If she didn't, one of them, likely Yang, was going to drop, and soon. Finally, he caught Yang's chin with a rousing uppercut. It was a good punch, stern and solid, more than enough to knock her out. Yang's head snapped back, then snapped down thrice as fast. Too late, John saw her eyes. They were red like fire. She grinned at him. Now that's a punch. My turn. Too close, too fast. No, he could tank it. Clenched knuckles dented his cheek. Her punch sent him flying. John didn't even realize he'd landed out of the ring. He must have blacked out one moment he was standing. The next, Yang Xiaolong stood over him, hand extended before his blurry vision. Why were there three of her? Had she really hit him that hard? Chagrin broke through the haze. Sloppy. He'd been arrogant, taking a hit he should have, by all rights, dodged. That would have had his hide. Bad. John dug a finger into his ringing ears. To no avail. I said not bad. Young's grin was nothing short of contagious. You almost had me there. Kurma scoffed. Bah, you would have won if you hadn't limited yourself. This is what you get for holding back. His spirits soared as she hauled him to his feet. Worth it, though. Ain't your fault. Yang must have mistook the words for herself, because she preened like the phoenix she was. You fought me on my terms, not yours. She flicked her golden mane over one shoulder. For what it's worth, that last hit was my semblance. Let me dish out the damage. I take twice as hard. You'll be ready for it next time. A thought must have occurred to her then, because she absolutely grinned at him. Guess I beat you to the punch for once. Silence stretched between the two of them. That was bad, and you should feel bad. John twitched. Ow, my head. Not bad, Tiger. She clasped his shoulder. Maybe I'll start calling you that instead. Another nickname in the Xiaolong repertoire. Lovely, as if she needed another. Please don't. Too late. See you around, Tiger. Her piece said. The bemused brawler drawled the last word. Bumped her hip against his, and strutted away to face the praise of her team. John slumped a little as his own came to console him, rubbing his aching eye. Right, lesson learned. Don't think what you can dodge. Realization dawned soon thereafter. Wait a minute, he'd lost the match. A bleary grin spread across the whiskered cheeks. Cover secure. This mission will be dangerous. Knowing this, will you still accept it, Penny? The cheery girl snapped off a sharp salute. Yes, sir, grandfather. Naruto patted her head. Good girl. Blake was wary of John Arc. It wasn't caution born of confrontation, rather a lack thereof. The boy was a walking enigma, one she couldn't seem to puzzle out no matter how hard she tried. Therein lied the problem. She liked mysteries, less so when they endangered her perhaps, but they intrigued her all the same, and yet he'd not made the slightest effort to approach her, not in the least. They'd barely spoken to one another. Two acquaintances, two ships passing in the night, their teams aware of one another, but little else. He had performed well against Weiss, and earned a bit of favor from that, if only because a small secret part of her had enjoyed watching the Schnee get smacked around. Was it wrong? Definitely. Did she enjoy it? Maybe a little. He was a faunus too. He must be. No ordinary human would have whiskers like that on their face. Today's bout only baffled Blake further. He wasn't all-powerful. Yang had managed to beat him. Hadn't she? He'd pulled back at the last second. He must have. Yang might have missed it, but she hadn't, as if he'd spotted himself from dealing a lethal blow. Only a killer could see such things, though it shamed her to admit it. On the outside, he put up a brave front, kind and affable, ever ready to step up when someone was in need. The very ideal of a huntsman. He'd certainly shown Winchester a thing or two. Yang and Ruby seemed to get on with him well enough. Weiss probably wanted a rematch with him, but she saw the way he held himself, the way he moved, the manner in which he held himself, the hesitation at key moments. Unfortunately, that begged another, more personal question. Did he know? She was hardly as infamous as Adam, but hadn't been subtle during her time with the White Fang, or her disguise. Most Faunish knew her face, if not her last name. In hindsight, that might have been her fault. A bow Really? She could have changed her name and outfit, dyed her hair, wore colored contacts, even thrown gamble shot away. Instead, she'd hidden her ears behind a pretty bit of ribbon and called it a day, because surely no one could see through such a brilliant disguise. Not one of her finer moments. That paranoid Kitty is being paranoid. A tiny voice, her own self-doubts, cooed in her ear. He doesn't even know who you are. Nonsense. It isn't paranoia if someone's out to get me. Exactly the sort of thing a paranoid person would say. She was talking to herself again, tossing her head from side to side. She buried herself in her book, or rather, she tried. A frustrated groan drew her back to reality. The sight before her did much to diminish the mystery of John Ark in her eyes, for the object of her curiosity sat not a table away. He was trying too hard. I can't figure this out. Head in his hands, teeth bared, eyes wild. He looked fit to bite the textbook before him. For that, at least she wouldn't blame him. Professor Port's nonsensual assignments were a cakewalk compared to the sheer slew of paperwork that was Professor Oobleck's. Someone in the distance could have sworn she heard the man holler, "Doctor!" at the skies. Her imagination, surely. Still, how could someone with strength and committedness be so hopelessly incompetent when it came to homework? Sat before an empty table in the library, locked in mortal combat with an equally he couldn't comprehend, with an equation he couldn't comprehend. John Ark fought. It was a losing battle. He anguished over the text to no avail. He was trying to do it alone too, the stubborn boy. But why? What did he gain from such a thing? Did he not want to disgrace himself before his team? Or was he simply studying during his downtime? More questions, not enough answers. Being a hunter is hard. His lips pursed, unaware of her keen hearing. Yeah. No, I chose this, but math is evil. Blake felt her ears twitching beneath her bow. Who was he talking to? Himself? It seemed the obvious answer, and yet she didn't want to believe it. Her fondness, he didn't let anything get to him. Yet an up-and-coming test had him racking his brain and chewing on a nail, gritting his teeth as though he were caught in some life-and-death struggle. Enough! Blake took pity on him. It's simple. Her arm crossed his as she reached over him and scribbled out the rest of the formula. See, she nudged his arm when he tilted his head. You just solve for X here, then the rat follows through. It's basic. How do you not know this? Sure, basic. Guess I must have missed that class. He blinked, then grinned. It didn't reach his eyes. You know, you're a pretty nice person, Blake. Right? She gulped. Nice. Paranoia reared its ugly head anew. Was he onto her? By the way, he continued, wholly unaware of her mounting anxiety, I wanted to ask you something. Panic bleated, turning her thoughts to static. Ask her about what? The White Fang? Nope. Code Red. Abandoned ship. Blake stepped back sharply, not quick enough to miss the flash of confusion on his face, followed by hurt. Wait. He rose, reaching out in a vain attempt to stop her. It wasn't anything bad, I swear. She retreated, or rather tried to, because she smacked into someone. I'm sorry, she mumbled to them. Please excuse me. Another John blocked her path. Another John, Blake recalled. What is this? I'm sorry. Each John filled their arms, looking quite chagrined. I panicked. As she looked on aghast, the doppelganger vanished in a plume of smoke. Please don't tell anyone. Her mind whirled a mile a minute. Don't tell anyone. Did he have a secret too? No, not important. That. Just now, what was that? He'd created another physical copy of himself, not at all like her clones. It had caught her, stopped her, and not dissolved. It had even spoken to her. Clones didn't do that. That thing had been alive. Golden eyes fluttered in a rapid blink. Just what are you? John scratched the back of his head. Just a normal student. Previews. Child sighed. You panicked, didn't you? Wait, we have a Professor Peach. Who is she? The woman smiled and kept walking. Maybe you were tired of being pushed around. Weiss blinked. Blake did what she always did. She ran. Hello, friend of Ruby. John leaned back. Hello, and you are? My name is Penny. It is a pleasure to finally meet you. Green eyes shone with thinly disguised glee. Your family has told me so much about you. Wait, family? Let me help you. I can do this myself. You really can't. Even I can see that. Torchwick tugged his hat down. These kids just keep getting weirder. End of chapter 13.